Welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast, brought to you by TournamentPokerEdge.com, the only podcast dedicated exclusively to poker tournament strategy. Now here's your host, Clayton Fletcher.
Hello once again, everybody, and welcome to the Tournament Poker Edge podcast. I'm Clayton Fletcher, your host, joined today by your former host and, of course, dear friend of the podcast, TPE's very own Killingbird, Derek Tenbusch. Hey, Derek.
What's up, Clayton? How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Wanted to hear first thing a while back when we had Jason on, and he was explaining to me what a stormer is and how he's now in charge of all the ACR stormers. And somehow it came up that you were running a charity home game. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's something I've done. This is actually the fourth year that I did it, and it's happy to say has grown every year. And basically, so I run a home game every Tuesday anyway, and it just happens that the Tuesday after Thanksgiving is called Giving Tuesday, and you'll see a lot of companies running different promotions and stuff. And it's kind of like Black Friday, but instead of spending money, you're supposed to donate money. Right. So it just worked out kind of perfect that I always do it on Giving Tuesday. And my wife and I work really closely with an organization called Triangle Beagle Rescue, which a really long story about how I got involved with them. But you can actually hear that story on the Thinking Poker podcast I was last on, if you want to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, a little tie in there, but so it's an organization we work really close with. So every year I do this stream on Twitch where basically every penny that's donated, or people can also subscribe to the stream and do different things that give me money essentially. But I just take all that money and give it to Triangle Beagle Rescue on that one night. So so it was really fun. We raised over $3,000, which was amazing.
Wow.
So yeah, I got to give a shout out, to anybody out there who's listening who happened to be in the stream that night or supported in any way. Thank you, because that's an incredible amount of money to a very small charity. It's one of you always hear these horror stories about how 60% of your money doesn't actually make it to the actual cause and things like that. But Triangle Beagle Rescue is just a very small, all volunteer run. There's no high paid CEO or anything like that. Right. So it's nice to be able to hand over that much money to an organization where every penny is going to go to good use. So
really,
so it was really great.
So what is it about beagles that how do beagles have such a special place in your heart?
So basically, the short story is our first dog was a beagle. That beagle got loose and was lost for 2 weeks. And in the many ways we tried to find her, one of them was that we reached out to Triangle Beagle Rescue because we just assumed if somebody found them that they might turn her into this rescue. We did end up finding her, not through Triangle Beagle Rescue, but through other crazy means, but they were really, really helpful and really kind and generous and nice to us and everything. So then, fast forward a couple of years, she passed away, and so we made a donation to the rescue in her honor. And when we did that, we got sort of a letter back thanking us, for the donation, but then also saying, if you'd ever like to get involved as a volunteer or a foster, here are the opportunities for you to do that. And we jumped on it, and we kind of started out just, helping out in little ways at first, and then eventually we became fosters. And I think I don't know the exact number, but I'm guessing we fostered somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 dogs, maybe.
Wow.
During that time.
Wow.
And my wife's now on the board of that charity, and she also handles all the social media and event planning and things like that for them. So it's become almost a full-time job, even though there's no pay.
Yeah.
But
and how many of those beagles were named Snoopy?
Would you believe none?
No, I wouldn't.
At least not of the ones we've fostered. I guarantee you there's been some Snoopies, but none that we've fostered. We did end up one dog that we fostered for a year. He was a very sort of a trouble case, like a challenging case. So we fostered him for a year, and we came to the conclusion at some point that he was just unadoptable. He just had too many anxiety issues and stuff. So we adopted him permanently. And he has the next most unoriginal name for a dog, which is Spot. So,
Spot, yeah.
but that was his name as a dog that was available for adoption. If somebody else had adopted him, they could have changed the name. But we were like, well, we've been calling him Spot for a year, so I guess we kind of have to stick with that now. So he's our dog permanently now. But so that's the most unoriginal name we've had.
Definitely Spot, Rover, Fido, the classics.
Yeah.
Classics.
Although I don't know if you watch The Walking Dead, but one of the characters has a dog now, and that dog's name is Dog. So that might be, I guess that actually is the most unoriginal name.
I like keeping the dog's name if you adopt a pet. Like I have a cat that I adopted, and his name in the adoption center was Bert. And I'm like, Bert the cat, you can't beat it. I can't think of anything better. So we just, I said, look, let you and me, Bert.
Yep,
so,
that's a great name. I like that name.
And if I ever got another cat, I could always name him Ernie. So
exactly.
Have them both. Yeah, but that's great that you did that for the animals. So basically people watch you play poker on Twitch, and if they enjoy what you're doing and they appreciate your work, they can make a donation, and then those donations go to the charity. Is that basically how it works?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works, at least for that evening.
Yeah.
And then the other times, like, it's basically the best way to look at it is sort of like tipping, Sure. So somebody sits there and watches your stream for an hour, and they're either A, entertained, or B, feel like they're being educated. So they might, they can tip you, a quarter. They can tip you $1.
Right.
Some people donate $20. Like, it just really depends. But it's a cool platform. I mean, for people who haven't checked it out, I think it's very. So my stream in particular is very much just entertainment. Like, I don't do a lot of strategy talk while I'm playing. I don't go into in-depth analysis. I don't pull up PO Solver and run a spot and go, oh, I should have folded or whatever,
You mostly get drunk, right?
Pretty much, yeah. we drink a lot of beer and we play a ton of poker, but we don't talk about the poker as much as we talk about the beer.
Sure. And speaking of beer, the last time we spoke, you were moving back home to start a new job?
Yep.
So how's that going?
It's going good. So we're back in North Carolina now. Right now I'm in Aberdeen, North Carolina. We're actually staying in an Airbnb while our house is being built that we're actually buying. So yeah, our nomadic lifestyle is coming to a close. We'll hopefully, knock on wood, should be in that house December 28th. So we only got about 3 weeks left of not having a home. But it'll have been about 9 months, 8 or 9 months that we've just kind of been on the move.
That's exhausting. It really is.
Yeah, I've loved it for sure. It's been a real adventure. It's been, we've seen a lot of things. We've met a lot of people we would have never met, done a lot of things we wouldn't have done. But at the same time, I really just want my own bed. I want an office again. It's just been a lot of. Not being able to get settled in, and we I keep telling people about how we sold or donated or gave away everything we owned essentially, which has been really nice and freeing. But there's just a few things where I'm like, I really want that again, but I don't want to buy it now because I don't want to have to move it. So I'm just like, okay, once we move, I can have my bar again, or whatever item it is. So I'm excited about that.
And now you're having a place custom built to your specifications?
Pretty much. It was one of those things where you could kind of pick certain things, but it was already pretty far along in the process. So it wasn't like we got to go, we want the room to be exactly this big. But, we got to pick paint colors and countertop materials and things like that. So,
and room for how many beagles?
We have room for all 3 of our dogs.
Good.
And we were actually pretty excited because during this 9 months, we haven't really been able to foster just because we're living in other people's homes. So with our dogs, that's one thing because we know they're trained and all that stuff. But with stray dogs off the street, you never know what you're getting. So we're really excited to be able to start fostering again because that's something we've definitely really missed. So I would say 90% of the time we'll have 4 dogs in the new house, but only 3 of them will be ours.
Wow. Dog lovers only, right? Must love dogs. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, congrats on all the, life changes. It's pretty exciting stuff. You're going to plant some roots and, start doing a job that you seem to be just made to do.
Yeah, I'm super excited about
It's
it.
so
yeah.
up your alley, like more than anything. So,
Yeah, so I left, when I went to Las Vegas, I was working at a brewery,
Mhm.
and I left that job. And what brought me back to North Carolina was an opportunity to work at a distillery. So I love my beer, I love my whiskey. It's like the perfect combination. So,
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
Well, that's amazing. So what is going on with TPE these days? Before we get to strategy, I want to hear what's going on because it seems like everybody, all the founders of TPE have all these other projects, including dogs and children that they're dealing
Yeah.
with. So how's the website going and what's happening lately?
Yeah, so everything's been really good. It's it's a more challenging time than it's probably ever been for a bunch of reasons, including what you just said, which is, we're all almost 10 years older now since we started the company. We all have kids. Well, not all of us. Mark's still living the single life dream, but, many of us have kids and other, jobs and stuff that have come up and things like that. But, we're really proud that TPE has continued to be a thing. I mean, we've seen a lot of poker training sites come and go. Many of them were way, way bigger than TPE at one point, and they couldn't survive, but somehow we managed to. So we're excited about that, and I think it's just a testament to, our community, because the people who are our members are just awesome, huge supporters and great folks. But obviously also to the pros making the videos. I mean, we got series running right now from Andrew Brokus, Assassinato, and we just finished up a series from Daryl Jace and Colin Moshman. So I mean, those are like four super well respected poker players and coaches. So I think the value is still there. There's tons of great content, and as we always talk about, like, this game just continues to change so fast. So it's like, if you were good 2 years ago, but you haven't kept studying, you're probably not as good now. So so if anybody wants to check it out, just head over to tournamentpokeredge.com.
Fantastic. All right, well, let's get into some strategy here. You've been talking about how the game has been changing, and I want to start with your hand. So,
Cool.
You had sent me a hand earlier. I did get a chance to glance at it, but why don't you talk us through what tournament is this hand from?
So this was a series on America's Card Room called OSS, which is kind of, for those of people who play in America, they probably know what that is. But if you play on PokerStars, it's sort of like their Scoop or their W Coop or whatever. Not as big of buy-ins and as big of prize pools, but similar sort of thing. And this was an 80K guaranteed, which I actually tried to figure out what the buy-in was for it, and I couldn't. But I'm guessing based on that guarantee that it was a $55 buy-in tournament.
Okay.
It could have been a 33, it could have been a 109, but I'm guessing a 55.
But those are the levels that they usually have. It couldn't have been $80.
No, yeah, all their stuff are sort of like in
either
tiers.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mentioned to Jason in a recent episode that I have attempted to play on ACR a few times, and I get killed. I'm just such a fish on that site. I don't know. I can't win on that site.
It's a tough site, especially now because their guarantees have gotten good enough that a
Yeah.
lot of like Euros and stuff are starting to play the bigger guaranteed tournaments. So it's not easy competition, which I actually enjoy. Like, I know a lot of people who will play on other sites because there's more fish. Not only that, I mean, I'm part of ACR Stormers too, so I have some sort of obligation to play on the site, but I don't play for a living, so I don't necessarily look for the softest tournaments,
Right.
which I know is like sort of backwards. I look for like the most fun tournaments, and their structures are really amazing, and you get to play against really good players, and I actually enjoy that part of it, even if I'm losing some EV because of it.
Right, because then it brings up hands that you can discuss, like the one we're about to discuss here, where you have interesting spots where maybe against lesser competition you won't even get into these spots because it's just easier to beat bad players.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
like as an example, like this is kind of funny actually. So since I've moved to Aberdeen, there was a former TPE member who lives in this town. It's a very, very small town. I think there's maybe 3,000 people that live here or something. But there's a little bar league game, and he runs this bar league game. So I was like, I'm sitting here in this small town. I don't really have anything else to do. I'm going to go play in this bar league. And I've gone twice, and I've taken first place twice. No, sick brag. Sick brag. I beat the bar league twice.
You're the king of the bar league.
Yeah, but I've tweeted about the fact that it's like so much fun because it's like so pure. It's like I don't know if there's a purer form of poker than the bar league. It's like a 60-year-old dude and like a 40-year-old woman and like a 22-year-old kid and like there's all these people and everybody's just having fun. There's no like pressure, there's no stress. It's just like this is so nice.
And what do you win for first place in that bar league?
A $25 gift card to that bar. Which,
that's great. That is great.
Fun.
It's like trivia night or something. It's
yeah,
great.
Exactly. So my point is, and we can kind of, I guess, maybe talk about this as we get to the end of this hand. This hand, I think I would do a very different thing at the end. I don't want to give too much away before we get into it. I would do something very different in that bar league than I would do online or in a World Series event or something. So
well, to me, poker's about adjustments, and obviously, who is my opponent? What is the prize? What's the situation in the tournament? All the different factors that we have to consider. That's what makes poker interesting. I mean, if you did the same thing in all situations and you'd play an online hand from an $80,000 guaranteed tournament the same way as you would at a bar league where you win a $25 gift card, of course you're going to have adjustments because you have to give your opponents credit for being able to make plays online that they wouldn't be able to make in a bar league situation. Right. Although I'm sure there's probably one or two decent players in the bar league. I mean, you're there, so you can't be the only person who has a clue, right? Yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring out which ones are those people and which ones are the ones who are like, because sometimes there's guys who they were just sitting at the bar and they're going, oh, what's that? And somebody says, oh, they do this poker thing every Wednesday or whatever. And he's like, oh, I want to play.
Yeah, why not? Count me in. How do I play?
Yep. How much is the buy-in?
Yeah, gotta love
zero?
It. Yeah. Oh, then definitely count me in.
Yeah.
Free roll.
Yep.
So, all right. So we're playing in this 80,000. Now, do you know about? So the blinds are 525 and 1050 with an ante of 130. So this is like a math problem at that point. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, it's a very odd. Like some of these tournaments that they run have, like I said, in my mind, very good structures because they're very slow. So like honestly, in this tournament, the next level might have been 600, 1200. Like it moves up really slow.
Right.
So you have all the time in the world to like accumulate chips and make moves and stuff. So we're at 525, 1050. And I believe we would have been in the money by this point.
Oh, okay. So that was my next question. How far deep into this tournament are we? All right. So if we're already in the money, do you think your stack is around average? You have about 50,000 in your stack. What do we have exactly? We have 50,336.
Yeah. This is one of the challenges of pulling your hand from your HUD is you just don't know all the details. Like you can mark a hand as a hand for review, but you don't know. You don't always know, were we in the money? How far from the money? How far into the money? Is there a pay jump coming up? There's a lot of sort of factors that we don't have.
Right. But looking at the other stacks of the table, you appear to have the fourth biggest stack, so you might have around an average stack.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Maybe slightly above average because the stacks who are shorter than us are in some cases significantly shorter. There's a guy at 16Ks. So we might be a little above average or at average.
All right. So, yeah, and I think, the listeners will understand why I'm asking so many questions because this is going to be a pretty interesting hand, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's worth mentioning, too, that the villain has almost the same stack as us. He has 1K more than us. So effective stacks, are right around 50K.
Right. So spoiler alert, there's going to be one villain.
Yeah, good point.
All right, so 3 folds to Derek Killingbird, and so you're in the low jack, if I'm doing this right.
That would be correct. Yep.
Yeah, so you're in the low jack, and you're holding ace queen offsuit, and you raise to 29.48, almost 3 times the big blind. Is this your standard open, or are there reasons why you would make it so big?
It is not my standard open. It's definitely bigger than I would normally make it here. I think I tend to go 2.1, 2.25, somewhere in that here. I almost never min raise, like an exact min raise. I tend to type out my raises. So even if we're at like 501k, I'll make it 2099 or something.
Right.
It's just
something.
it's my I don't know if there's even a strategy reason to it. It's something I've been doing for like 8 years, and I've just never changed it.
Right.
But yeah, I would definitely normally min raise here, and I don't know why I went so big here. The only reason when I was looking at this hand on my HUD, the only reason I could come up with that I might have done this is that the guy immediately to my left has only been at the table for 6 hands, and he's 3-bet 3 of them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he doesn't become a factor in this hand. But when I looked at this, I was like, I wonder if I did it because this guy had, literally 3 out of 6 times has 3-bet the opener in the short time he's been here. So maybe I'm trying to avoid a 3-bet by making this a little bit bigger.
Okay,
because
I see the logic there, but honestly, Derek, I don't mind getting 3-bet by a guy that loves to 3-bet when I have ace queen.
Yeah,
Right?
that's actually a fair
always
point.
Come back over the top with a 4-bet with ace queen against a guy that is like a 3-betting problem.
Yeah,
He's like addicted to 3-betting, so our hand is great against his range.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. And again, I don't know if that was my reasoning. It was just the only thing I could come up with.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's also possible that I meant to type 2248 or something.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
But I definitely,
drunk.
yeah, exactly. But I don't like my sizing here. I'll say that much. I think it's kind of unnecessarily big.
Okay, well, the big blind has 19,000. So another possible explanation for your bet size is it makes it hard for him to just call. It's harder to flat from out of the big blind when you're going to have to put in almost 3K of your 19K. So at that point, he might look at it more as a shove fold situation, and obviously we want him to shove so we can call, because again, I think ace queen is a pretty strong hand for that spot. Putting some numbers on this, there's 2,700 in the pot ish, and we have about 50K. So our M is right around 19, and we have 49 big blinds, right?
Yeah.
So looking at that way, you're putting in 3 of your 49 big blinds, or almost 3. But we really need to play the effective stacks, and all things being equal, your most likely competitor for this pot is the big blind, just because he's always getting the best price to call you. I mean, obviously all things are not equal. For example, the player to your immediate left seems to have a 3-betting problem. So he might be more likely in this situation. But yeah, I definitely, one thing that stuck out to me as I first took a look at this one was I just felt the opening bet was unusually large, but I don't really mind occasionally putting in a 3x just to mix up your play. And if you like to randomize your bet sizing, ace queen is perfectly fine to do that with. You don't really hate taking it down, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just ace queen.
Yeah, and I think too, like, there might be some value here too to the fact that if we are going to play this as a 4-bet, 10-3 bets, maybe by going a little bigger, we force their 3-bet to be a little bit bigger, which allows us to just jam as opposed to sort of, without it being an unusually sized 4-bet. It would probably still be pretty big. Like, I don't know, if we make it roughly 3K and somebody makes it like 8,500 or something, it's not quite as weird to shove 40K as if we made it 2 and somebody made it 4.5 or something.
Right. Well, what I like to look at, I tend to look at things mathematically first, and by the time somebody else puts it, well, by the time we put in our 3K, there's 6,700 in the pot, and if the guy that likes to 3-bet chooses to 3-bet, and say he puts in like 80, 85, right? So 67 plus 85 is 15.2. And then if we shove over the top of him, he's only got 44 to start the hand. So we'll be laying about a little less than 3 times the pot, which is totally fine with ace queen against a player who does that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's even more attractive if somebody flats his 3-bet, I think.
Right.
Which could happen as well, especially if they've all noticed, as you have, that he 3-bets too often, or just seems to be on a 3-betting rampage at this point. So, I like all of that. And I think opening to this larger amount makes that play much more attractive, if that's what we're planning to do. Which, again, you're looking back at a hand you played a while back, don't remember exactly every single thing, but you do remember that this was that table with the guy to your left that kept 3-betting everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So cool. Anyway, that happens, and the player we were concerned about doesn't get involved, but the button, who, as you mentioned, has the same stack size as we do, he's just got about 1,000 more than we do, which is essentially the same stack, calls. And everyone else gets out of the way, and we see a flop heads up with, we just did this, 8,700 in the pot.
Yep.
86.41 to be exact. I love online poker.
I know, isn't it great?
It comes 10-6-6 rainbow, and the action is on you. What did you do and why?
So I went ahead and bet $29.99. Again, my usual not random, but odd size betting. But let's call it 3K into 8,600. I think this is a good board for us. His range, I think, can be pretty wide. I mean, he can have a bunch of pairs, which I think are probably going to call here. Like, he can have 2s through 5s. He can have 7s through 9s. He can even, obviously he can have 10s and stuff too. I think he would have 3-bet his over pairs. So I like to think my over cards are live. We have a backdoor straight draw as well. But he's also going to have a ton of like king, queen, king, jack, ace 5, hands like these that are going to fold. So I think he's going to fold here enough, that it's worth putting in a C bet here.
Yeah. So it's just a standard continuation bet spot. What I guess I would base my decision on whether to check and bluff catch or bet is really just who is this opponent. And I don't know how much information you have about him, given that this hand was played a while back. Do you have any HUD stats on this guy? Are there anything you could tell us about your opponent?
A little bit. So he's running 27-21, which means he's playing 27% of pots. And raising 21%. So he's fairly active, but those are pretty reggy numbers. That's not a nit, but it's also not a loose cannon. Like, he's playing pretty reggy numbers. The only number that I think probably is of interest here. Now, first I should mention these numbers are based on 33 hands, so we haven't played a lot of hands with him at this point.
Yeah.
But the only number that's maybe of interest here is that his fold to C bet percentage is 0. But it's also worth mentioning that's only 3 hands.
Right. It's 33 hands total.
Yeah. So he's faced to C bet 3 times.
And he called all 3.
And all 3 he called. But as we mentioned, we also have that's limited information, because if we were actually at this table live, we might think back and go, oh, but all 3 of those he had, he flopped top pair or whatever, So we don't know what that number means necessarily, but it doesn't seem like he likes to fold the C bets. Now, I guess the question that brings up is that good or bad for us in this situation on this board?
Right. Well, so our range versus his range, if he's willing to call you down with worse, then it's fine. But the problem is you are going to be out of position on future streets, and how hard are you going to cling to your ace high if you don't improve against a guy that floats a lot? Or does he? Like you say, it's only 33 hands, so maybe he doesn't really float a lot. He may have just had it 3 times that somebody C-bet into him. But, given this limited information, what we can glean from it, it's very I wouldn't put too much stock in 33 hands worth of HUD. That said, it's not nothing. It's It's not 0. It's the opposite of 0. It's 100. So he's always called every time he's had an opportunity to call a C-bet. He's taken that opportunity. And now in this hand, he makes it 4 for 4 with another call. I think knowing that, I still would probably at least consider c-betting. But to me, the stat I would want to know is how often does he bet the flop when checked to?
Mm-hmm.
Because I like using this hand as a bluff catcher. You want to have some checks in your range that are check calls, right? You don't want to always c-bet your strong hands and always check fold your nothing hands. And this hand is good enough to me, especially depending how aggressive he is, how likely he is to bet if I check. I think we might make more money checking and maybe even calling all the way down with this ace queen, depending again on his level of aggression. So
right. I think if we had, let's just say we had 1,000 hands on this guy,
yeah,
and he never folded to c-bets, or at least a very high percentage of the time did not fold to c-bets, then I think I kind of like checking and calling. And, we can obviously do some reevaluating on the turn and all that kind of stuff.
right.
But I think
small sample.
Yeah, I think with this small sample in a pure vacuum, I think I just like c-betting, trying to take it down. We don't have to invest a whole lot of money to do that. So,
and you definitely gave yourself a good price. You bet just a little more than 1/3 of the pot. So I think that's fine to try to take it down. And if you don't take it down, it's not the end of the world because there's a decent chance that ace queen is still good anyway, even when he calls.
yeah.
So I'm good with it. All right. So what happens on the turn?
So on the turn, we get the ace of spades.
Mm-hmm.
So we make top pair with a queen kicker. Well, I guess we could say two pair. There's 14.6K in the pot. It does bring in a backdoor flush draw. It's the ace of spades. So now we have the ace and the 10 of spades on the board. And we kind of have to decide now if we are going to continue to bet. I think this kind of brings back the same conversation, which is if we know this guy has called many double barrels, then I think double barreling here is awesome. If he's a guy who floats but gives up to future aggression, then maybe we want to check and give him a chance to do something. I just don't think we have enough numbers here to determine that. So I opted to go for a bet, but I made it quite small in hopes of continuing to get value from things like nines or eights or any of those kind of hands. Or, if he has 10 jack, queen 10, king 10, hands like that, I think he continues with those a decent amount of the time if we give him the right price. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that sort of thinking of going small here to try to continue to get value?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, logically, it makes sense. When I suspect that my opponent is a guy that likes to float, the reason why a lot of us float in position is to see what the other guy does on the turn, and if he shows weakness on the turn, we pounce. So you might make more money checking to him now that you've paired up. Kind of depending on what he thinks of your range, like how hard does he think that ace hit you? We might be able to. Actually, when I'm out of position, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think I make more money than the average player checking and calling.
Yeah.
From out of position. I feel like I use that tool or that trick, you could call it, more often because we're kind of in an aggressive mode right now. You said earlier how poker itself keeps changing, and I feel like right now people just want to bet. And I feel like checking and calling, because people are so aggressive nowadays, is more profitable than it used to be. It used to be, if the ace didn't hit my opponent in the old days, he would never bet it. Right? Why would I bet? I'm scared of the ace,
Yeah.
But now they think because I checked, I'm scared of the ace, and I might be able to pick up an extra bet on the turn by checking. In other words, I don't know how much action you can get on this small bet. Like you say, yeah, if he has a 10, you could probably get a little something. But I think that he's probably going to give up with most of his range.
Yeah, and we can also think about future streets, right? Like if we think he'll call here with something like 10 jack, well, he's not going to call the river when we bet again. So maybe, if we can only get one street, and we might not even get one more, like because he might fold here. is it better to just check, A, give him a chance to bluff, and B, give us a higher percentage chance of getting a call on the river because we checked the turn, and he kind of just sees that as weak or whatever. So I think spots like this are super villain dependent.
Yeah, and I know listeners love when we say that, but it's true. It's villain dependent.
Yeah.
It just always is. And since we don't have the villain here to interview him and ask him what we should do, we have to kind of piece it together. It's almost like an incomplete puzzle. We're missing a few pieces of the puzzle, but we have to try to put it together anyway, right?
Yeah.
So,
and I think one thing to consider, is what does he think we would do on this turn with our entire range? Because if I'm a really good player and I'm Dancing Banana, who's our villain in this hand,
great name, by the way.
It is a great name. As soon as that ace hits, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do one of two things depending on what my hand is. I'm gonna go, oh shoot, that kills. I do want to see that card, or I'm gonna go, well, that's a perfect bluff card for this guy, for Killingbird. If he did have air here, like this is a perfect card for him to continue to bluff on. So I'm gonna put a raise in and try to take this down. But that again, it just depends so much on who this villain is. Like if you're at the World Series main event and you just finished playing 9 hours with this guy, you might know what you might know what he's capable of, but we don't. So
we played 33 hands with him online, and so we have to kind of obviously it's a game of incomplete information. In this case, our information is very, very incomplete. But something you just said just kind of struck me. When you make this bet, are you actually hoping to get raised?
That's a good question. I was just about to say it depends on who it is against.
Right.
There's some people where you're like, please raise me. I've seen you pull this move 7 times today. Please raise me. In this case, I don't think so. Because it's not going to be many bluffs unless he floated something like King Queen of Spades or something. There's not a ton of bluffs that he's going to be doing that with. The only hand that we'd crush would be like Ace Jack. If he decided to peel on with Ace King, he's got better beat. If he flopped a set or quads or it had a 6, well, we're crushed.
And is Ace Jack is Ace Jack going to raise? I don't think Ace Jack is going to raise.
I don't think so. And that's kind of, and that's what I'm kind of saying, that's probably the only thing. Ace 10, I guess, is a possibility, but we obviously blocked that.
And Ace
I don't
Ace
think
10 is winning, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're stoked to see a raise.
Yeah. So with that in mind, assuming Dancing Banana is competent and that he's the type that might float the flop hoping to bluff raise the turn, maybe it's better to check here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess, and it brings up the question too, we're kind of inviting a raise.
With our small sizing.
Yeah, but if we don't think he'll raise as a bluff very often, then maybe that's okay, But then we have to be willing to go with it if we're using that philosophy. And I don't know that I'm ready to go with this hand for 50 big blinds apiece.
Yeah, right. It's you probably have the best hand, but how big do we want this pot to get? You already bet the flop. I feel like you have a classic 2 streets of value kind of top pair hand now on the turn.
Yeah.
And I think something you said before, I wanted to kind of delve into a little bit more. Checking the turn, it gives you an advantage on the river because river bets are much easier to call, especially because your turn on the check, your check on the turn shows a certain amount of weakness. So your opponent might give you a curious call with just a pair of 10s or something here. Also, when you bet the turn, your opponent has to worry about what Sklansky calls the hammer of future betting, which is he also going to bet again on the river? And that makes it really hard for him to cling on with a 10, which is what we want him to have when we bet again. So for all those reasons, I think checking the turn, it helps you avoid getting bluff raised if that's in our opponent's arsenal. And it also kind of helps you control the pot size and makes it easier to get value when your hand is good on the river, where it might be harder for your opponent to fold when he has something like you said, like a Jack 10 type of hand. I mean, obviously we're going to kick ourselves when he has a worse ace, but that's about it. right?
Yeah, I think you make a good point. I think I like checking here, actually. And I think if we're not going to check, since we are kind of thinking we're only going to get one more street, whether it's here or on the river, I think if we are going to bet, we might as well just bet a little bigger. No, I don't think we want to, like, pot it or anything, but maybe we go like 8K instead of 5,200, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Like I said, if we think we're just getting one more, then let's just get a little bit more of it now, and then, I mean, hey, if we spike an ace on the river or something, then great, we can go for a bunch. But but I think I lean towards a check for all the reasons we just discussed.
Okay, great. So in fact, you did bet, and you bet 1/3 of the pot, right?
Yep, 52-25, which is just a little over a third.
Right. And then Dancing Banana calls you again. So now the pot is at 25K, and the river is a 10.
The 10 of diamonds, which does not complete the flush, but we've been sitting here hoping this guy has a 10 the entire time.
Yeah.
And now we're really, really hoping he doesn't have a 10.
Right. So for the final board of 6, a 10, 6, 6, ace, 10. So we have a double paired board. All right. So how should we approach this? There's 25,000 rather in the pot.
Yeah, we have 39K behind.
Right. Yeah. So we still have.
The villain has about the same.
About the same. Yeah.
So I think there's a bunch of things we can do here. I think I want to. Maybe it's. Well, no. I was gonna say maybe it's better to say what I did before, just to make it a little easier. But let's not do that yet. So I think we can bet as a blocker essentially here, sort of a blocker / value bet. Maybe like 10K or 9K or something.
Yeah, maybe even a little less actually, because he has to fear the 10 himself. You bet all 3 streets, right?
Yeah, starting with obviously a 10 high board.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. We could go even smaller, maybe like 8. And I think we'll find out relatively quickly if he has something. Now, it's kind of cool because if he like shoves or something, then we can probably comfortably fold. But we can also still get called by a worse ace.
Absolutely. I mean, if
low.
you bet small, if you bet like 8,000 into 25,000 here, and our opponent has the ace jack or some such ace, I think he can't fold. And then you get value for your hand. I also don't think he can raise you with a 6.
Agreed. Yeah.
So
yeah, not the way we've played it. Exactly.
Yeah. When we're raised, it's a 10 or quads or something.
Right.
So yeah, ace 10. When we get raised, we are always beat. I mean, if he's that good that he can bluff raise on this board, good for you, buddy. Because you are pretty much representing a 10 the whole way.
Yeah.
Or better, obviously. I mean, you open
right.
flop, so.
I mean, the other alternative is to check and call, check to get him to bluff, or we check and decide that if he bets, he has it, and we fold. I think I like betting, for all the reasons we just talked about. We get called by worse aces, and we also allow ourselves to commit a smaller amount than we might have to call, to hero call on the river. If he bets 12 and we're planning to call, maybe I'd rather bet 8.
Right, and that's the classic blocking bet, right? You're trying to set the price for the river when you're out of position with your defensive blocking bet, knowing that it's so impossible for your opponent to bluff raise the river. On this board, when you get raised, you're beat. So you might as well tell him how much you're willing to pay. If you're planning to check and call 10,000, then you might as well go ahead and bet 8,000. The only time you lose money is when your opponent wouldn't have bet anything on the river and has you beat.
Right.
Which I can't think of too many hands that won't bet if you check that have us beat.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
So I really like a defensive blocking bet here for that reason. So what did you do?
So we checked, and I'm really disappointed in myself for checking. I think it's like, I know these things are always easier in hindsight, or at least
of course
they're not easy, but they're easier. To me, I think this is one of the clearer river spots I've seen to make a small blocking bet on the river. And because we didn't, the villain, well, maybe not because we didn't, but we didn't. And the villain bet's almost 16K, 15.75K. So it's a big bet. But it's not so big that it doesn't scream value to me.
it's about 60% of the pot.
Yeah, like if you were to ask me, hey, what's the normal size of like a really value-y bet? I would say like 60% of the pot.
Yeah, it's kind of a perfect size whether he's bluffing or not.
Right. So, we're in a really awkward spot here. We have to put 16 of our 40K remaining chips in the pot, if we want to call it here. And I can't think of any bluffs. Now, the question is he ever betting like ace-jack for value or ace-9? But I don't think he has those very often.
Yeah, I don't think so either. We know where two of the aces are already. So it's hard for him to have an ace. It's also hard for him to have a 10 or a 6 for that matter.
Sure.
Just because we are aware of the location of some of those cards. But, even beyond that, it comes down to who is this guy? Would he check? I could think of some hands that might call the flop but would have folded the turn. So I'm like you. I'm not finding any bluffs.
Yeah. And there's not even really any draws, with the exception, like I said, of maybe a floated king, queen of spades or king, jack of spades or something like that.
Right,
but it's not like
it's picked up a gut shot on the turn.
Yeah.
But had nothing on the flop other than 2 overcards.
Right. So unless they just literally on a pure float. But there's no it's not like the board was 7, 8, 10 with 2 hearts or something, where they could have all these like missed flush draws or straight draws or combo draws that they might turn into a bluff now. I just had a really hard time finding a bluff here.
Yeah, as played, I would fold, but I think you would have been much happier had you bet the river.
Yeah, which I know probably sounds counterintuitive maybe to some listeners. They might be like, but wait, he saved himself 8K.
Right.
Because we didn't bet. But so we do end up folding. You could look at it as we saved 8K, but you could also say, did we cost ourselves, 32K because he actually did bluff here and we could have got called by, or not really bluffed, but he made a turn. He might have turned a hand into a bluff like an ace jack or something. That we could have got called by. So
I think you can rest easy. Now that he bet this much in this situation, you are supposed to get bluffed some of the time. And then maybe this is just one hand where you happen to get outplayed. But since both of us have a lot of experience playing cards and we are having trouble coming up with many bluffs that could even be in his range, that means that he either took some very strange line on some hand with very low equity in hopes that you would eventually check so he could steal the pot, or he made an unlikely thin value bet. But I think even if he did have something like ace-jack, his sizing would probably usually be smaller. I think it's a very strange bet for him to make with an ace-jack type of hand. So, yeah, again, I'm really at a loss to find many bluffs in his range, and I think, therefore, it's a fold that I would be comfortable with. And if he turns over like a 5-4 diamonds, you know what? Good hand, buddy.
Yeah. He deserves it in that case.
Yeah, you got it. You outplayed me, and good for you. You hoped that I would eventually check. You paid a lot of money to see if I did, and then when I did, you pounced and got me to fold ace queen in a awkward spot for that particular hand. So yeah, I don't think it's bad.
I'm happy with the fold. I'm not happy with checking the river, but I'm happy that we found the fold. And so I thought it was an interesting spot, and I think it's a spot that we kind of, a lot of times we find ourselves in these. Well, I won't say a lot. Sometimes we find ourselves in these positions where we feel like we're in the driver's seat the whole way, and then something happens where we go, oh.
Yeah. I really think the street that I like least, though, is the turn. I really prefer a check on the turn.
Yeah, good point.
Keep this pot a little smaller, and then even if this awful card comes on the end, maybe you could check the river again and see if he wants to take a stab at the pot, and then he will have more bluffs. The problem is he doesn't have that many bluffs when he calls you on the turn. So the river's a little easier to play. It's easier to call the river when you check the turn.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point.
Thanks. I've been trying to make good points. I'm on a mission to try to make some more good points on the podcast.
Well,
So,
mark this day down in history. December 5th, Clayton made a good point.
Yeah, and I got props from the boss, so I appreciate that too. All right, do you have time to do mine?
I sure do.
Okay, so I played in the $1,700 Planet Hollywood Circuit Main Event in Las Vegas a few weeks ago, and I was at a pretty average table. Like, I didn't feel like fist pump, yeah, what a great table, but I also wasn't like, wow, who are these killers? So It was kind of a mixed bag type of table. We're about halfway through day one, and the blinds are 250, 500, with a 75 ante paid by all the players. So there's 1425 in the pot, and we have 24,600 down from our starting stack of 30K. So things are not going particularly well, but it's kind of a slow structure, and we're not exactly in, panic mode or whatever. Our M is 17. We have, 49 big blinds. So, however you like to count the pot. The player in third position opens to 1,200. Now, he's he joined our table very recently, like in the last few minutes. But I kind of have a read on him just based on, just getting a feel for somebody live. He's about 30-ish. Asian guy. He seems like he's very thoughtful, serious player. Almost appears to me to be stressed out about playing in this tournament. I don't know. Maybe he won a satellite to get into it. Maybe he's 100,000 in markup. Maybe he just moved to Vegas and this is his first big shot that he's taking. Something like that. But he doesn't strike me. He strikes me like I get a feel from him that he's trying not to screw up.
Mm-hmm.
All right? Not that he's nitty or terrified, but that he just really, really, really wants to play well.
Yeah.
Okay? So just to give you a feel for him, on my right, on the button, I'm in the big blind, so player 2 to my right is like such a typical character that you might encounter in Vegas. He's an older guy, like probably late 50s, early 60s. He's got a Bellagio hat, which I think when you turn 50 in Las Vegas, you get a Bellagio hat. Like you get the hat. It matches with your members only jacket and your comfortable sneakers, and you drink coffee all day, and you wear that hat, and you kind of, you want to make sure everybody knows that even though you're old, you could play cards, okay?
Yeah.
You little whippersnappers. All right. So he's got that vibe to him. The first player has about 30K because I think he may have just bought into the tournament.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that, but I got that vibe like he just got here and he's ready to play his best game of his life. And now this caller has been with us here for a while, and he's actually got everybody covered. He's running good, and he's got about 48K. Now we're in the big blind. The small blind folds, and we're in the big blind with Jack of Hearts, 9 of Clubs. It would cost me 700 more to call. I don't think folding is an option. It's just we have a playable hand. We're getting a great price, especially with the caller on the button.
Yeah, I think with that price this deep, I'm gonna call here.
Yeah,
virtually 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I mean maybe once in a while you could do something crazy and 3-bet, but I don't know. I hate to turn Jack 9 into a bluff. I like this hand. I don't want to take it down now. I want to see a flop with this hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I just called 700. I think that's pretty uncontroversial. But don't worry, things are about to get controversial. So now there's 45-25 in the pot, and the flop comes ace, 7, deuce, all diamonds.
And we have no diamond.
We have no diamond. We have the jack of hearts and 9 of clubs. And
I see trouble. I see trouble on the horizon.
So my plan was to check and fold because I couldn't think of a worse flop for my hand. I check. The original bettor puts in 1,500, and the old guy in the Bellagio hat folds. And now it's up to me. All right. I just said my plan was to check and fold. Something told me to raise. And the reason why is I just think this is a really good board for me to bluff. And at this point, my hand doesn't matter at all. I mean, obviously it matters a little. It would be nice to have a diamond when I make this play. But I made it 4,000, and I thought that my opponent would only call with a really good diamond, something like king-queen offsuit with the king of diamonds, or a strong ace, a hand like ace-queen with or without a diamond.
Agreed.
And so I think because he bet so small, and because I had to read that he was trying to play well, I didn't think it was likely he had any of those hands. I thought a hand like ace-queen with no diamond, for example, right, would want to bet more to protect and not let anyone who's drawing to a flush get there too cheaply. And only betting a third of the pot, offering 4-1, is the perfect odds for me to see if I can hit my flush. And I get the feeling this guy knows enough about poker to know that.
Right.
And so I just didn't think that he had a very large value range.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Because you do want to obviously protect against draws if you don't have it here. So his bet sizing would lead me to say he doesn't have a big draw. He doesn't have a big ace. So he either has nothing or he has it, like 5-6 of diamonds or king queen of diamonds or something like that.
Right.
Because those are hands I would probably bet like 1,500 here with, or maybe even I could even see going maybe a little smaller. Although that might be too obvious. So yeah, I actually don't hate your reasoning. I do think it's important to consider what we're going to do when we get. I mean, we know what we're doing if he shoves, right? Or raises.
Oh yeah.
But I do think we have to think about, okay, what are we gonna do if he calls on various cards?
Right.
So
that's a great point. So, I mean, I was kind of talking about it one street at a time, but we can't really think that way. You're right. We can't just raise to 4K and then not have a clue how we're going to handle if he calls, right? If he folds, we win the pot. That's great. If he re-raises, good try, Clayton. You lost. Mm-hmm. Lost more than you should have in that pot. Whatever. Get on with the next hand. The problem is when he calls, what's the plan? So my thinking was, even though I have nothing, there are a few cards that would improve my hand and that I could continue representing a flush if he calls. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think I would check raise with a small flush. Like if I had like a 9-8 of diamonds, or really given the price I was given pre-flop, virtually any 2 diamonds I could have in my range. So if I flopped a flush, I think check raising would make sense. I would also make this play with the king of diamonds in my hand some of the time. If I flopped a good strong flush draw myself. So there are cards on the turn that might improve my hand. And with those cards, maybe something like a 10 that would give me a gut shot, or an 8 would also give me a gut shot. A jack or a 9 would obviously pair my hand. Obviously, some of the jacks and 9s are diamonds. So is the plan to continue representing a flush even if more diamonds come? What do you think?
Right. I think so. Yeah. So obviously we're talking about if he decides to call.
If he calls, right.
Yeah, so I think we can't just treat this as a raise to attempt to take down the pot on the flop, like a sort of one and done moment. I think we have to be willing to do some things on future streets to try to win this pot if we're going to make this move here.
We'll talk about that a little bit more, would you? Why can't we just take a shot right now and then give up if there's any further action? Why not?
I think because some of it has to do with the fact, or to the description you gave me of the villain, which is he really does not want to make mistakes, and maybe is a little bit stressed. Maybe it's his first tournament. Who knows? But he seems maybe worried a little. So I think we need to use that information to give him many opportunities to make a mistake,
right?
or either in his mind or for real, one of the two. And so if he has something like ace king of clubs, ace queen off with no diamond, things like that, I think he's gonna call here because people get sticky with their hands, especially top pair type hands where they had a big hand to start. So I think we have to be willing to try to do more things to win this pot for those reasons. Now, there's some people, if you had described this guy as the tightest rock at the table, and when he calls, he has it, I would take a whole different approach, But I just think because of the description, I like the idea of trying to win this on certain, not every turn, not every river. Let's say the ace of clubs peels off. I don't know if I like it so much then, because if this guy has all those ace X hands we're talking about, well, now he even loves his hand even more, even though there are 3 diamonds on the board. And I kind of think the most interesting cards for us to continue to do stuff on would be a diamond. Because we're not going to have to go very big to get him to fold a lot of his range. So when he has, I don't know, 2 black kings, or he has ace king of clubs, or all those kind of things, I mean, if the pot's going to be like 1,200, I mean, we can bet like 4K, 3,500 even maybe. It's just going to be like, oh, great. I knew that stupid diamond was going to come, and he's going to fold.
Right. Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to bluff him off of a lot of his hands when another diamond peels off on the turn. And I agree with you 100% that continuing on another diamond is profitable. It's a good play.
Yeah.
Now, are there any other cards? Like, do you agree with me that a 10 or an 8 might also have possibilities as far as continuing the bluff?
Yeah, I think that could be cool because the other part of his range that we talked about is things like, just whatever hands with the king of diamonds or a queen of diamonds. And kind of going back to what we talked about before, if this guy's cognizant of not wanting to make mistakes, well, one of the classic mistakes we always talk about is chasing draws, So if he's a book learner and he's not, he's not into chasing, or he knows that chasing draws is a cliche mistake. Well, here's a perfect example. Here's a perfect opportunity to get him to fold his king queen with the king of diamonds, or
sure,
king queen with the queen of diamonds. And it's kind of it kind of goes back to what we talked about in the last hand, which is I think when we do bet some of those cards you were talking about on the turn, like the 8. Or I guess the 10, a 10 non-diamonds. I think now on the turn we're going to kind of find out because people don't necessarily call 2 and certainly not very often 3 bullets with non-great hands.
Right.
So I think we're going to find out pretty quick and not for a huge price when we bet this. Whatever the turn is, diamond or non-diamond. But it is nice to turn some of that equity. Now, if the card was a complete brick non-diamond, I wonder if that means we should slow it down a little.
Yeah, I mean, I want to have a give-up range. And
yeah.
I think that all of the, something like a 3 of clubs, right?
Yeah.
Is a give-up card for me. Another ace is a give-up card.
Mm-hmm.
A non-diamond queen or something. Just anything that really doesn't do anything for me at all, I think is fine. We took our shot, and now we can give up. But I agree with you that against this player type, it's important to try to give him the opportunity to make the mistake that he's most likely to make, which is folding in spots where he should call.
Yep.
Based purely on the read that I have of him, his body language, the way he's been studying everyone so carefully, the way he seems so serious and a little bit worried, maybe in over his head, something like that. Maybe he's an online player. He's never played live before. I don't know. But, it's kind of that player profile that makes me want to bluff him. And the only reason why is because he opened the door by betting so small on this board on the flop. And let that be a lesson to listeners who might find themselves playing in live tournaments. A lot of us who are like more seasoned live pros, we look for little signs that a pot's available, and we try to take it.
Yeah.
Which is why betting this amount with the nuts would be a great play against me, because I might see that small bet as weakness. So when he called me, I started putting him on a stronger range, but not a nutted range. I think that if he had a king high flush, king queen of diamonds or something, he would keep raising and hope to get all in with me, because he would, number one, know that he had the nuts and want to get in against another really strong hand, but also because I think players like him worry too much about me having a set and drawing live against his nut flush.
Right.
So I think that I would expect him to usually keep trying to build the pot to my check raise on the flop when he had the actual nuts here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people like this also get worried about, I don't know, lack of a better description, like the fish getting off the hook. So if you have a strong hand here or a strong draw and he has the nuts, then I think he wants to do something now before another diamond comes and makes you fold, your set or whatever.
My set, right, yeah. Yeah, so when he continued, my plan was mostly to continue only on any diamond or an 8 or a 10.
Yeah,
So,
I like that.
And otherwise just check and give up. I took my stab at this and, welcome to the table, sir. You just won a nice pot. All right. 12,525. That is the pot size heading to the turn, which is the 8 of clubs. So our board is now ace of diamonds, 7 of diamonds, deuce of diamonds, 8 of clubs. And we have now picked up a straight draw. Not a very good one, but a straight draw nonetheless. So I said that this card would be in my continuing range, and I did continue. I bet 7,600 into the 12,525. Thoughts on that?
I like it, and I like the slightly bigger bet sizing here because, it's kind of time now to make this guy fold his king of diamonds or his queen of diamonds like we talked about.
Right.
And I don't think he's going to do that if we bet, a third or something. So I think we have to go a little bit bigger here. I like, we're, 60%? And it is funny that it's around 60%, and we just got done talking about how value-y 60% looks.
Right.
So I think, I like this bet sizing a lot. I think it's perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, it's great.
Good. I'm glad you think so. This was the spot in this hand that I was most concerned about. I felt like my bet sizing might have been a little too big for the situation. Now, I've talked on this podcast before about how when I'm bluffing, I try to get the lowest possible price that will get it done. There's a kind of a sweet spot of betting the right amount that's going to get the right number of folds, the right percentage of the time, but it doesn't cost you too much when he does call. So I thought later that maybe 6,600 would have been enough here on the turn, but you seem to like it, so maybe it's okay. Yeah.
I think I like it. I think once you start creeping down into the sixes or even close to the high fives,
right,
he's just going to look, especially live, because people aren't as good at counting the pots.
Yeah, true.
And stack sizes and stuff. So if it gets too cheap, he's going to look at all those pretty chips in the middle, and then he's going to go, well, it's only 6K more. I got the nut flush draw. If I hit this, I can get all of it. I'll call. So I think we do want to discourage him a little bit. And it's a cool bet, like I said, because it looks value-y, but it's also big enough to work as a bluff, I think.
Sure. Okay, great. So now when he called the check raise on the flop, I think it's smart, even before we deal the turn, to try to think about ranging him. And I think, he probably has some king, queen with the king of diamonds, or possibly even the queen of diamonds type hands. He also has, aces, like ace, king with or without the king of diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
Ace, queen with or without the king of diamonds will probably call that bet and then fold to this one, I think. So I have a good amount of bluff targets that would call the check raise on the flop and then fold to additional pressure on the turn. That range I just described, like I think any one pair hand would probably have to give up. But I don't expect him to fold ace king with the king of diamonds, even to 7,600. I think when he calls here, that's what he's going to have a lot.
Yeah.
Like an ace king or ace queen with a diamond. So.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think also it's, we were talking earlier about the possibility of him having a made flush. I think we can start to discount that a little bit now. Even more. We kind of discounted it on the flop anyway, but I think we can discount it even more now because now we've shown, real value, real aggression. And we're saying if we were bluffing before, well, we got something now.
Right.
So I really, really think if he had a flush now, he would go ahead and get this in.
Yeah.
Or at least attempt to. I don't know if it's an all in or if it's just a click back or what it is, but I think he would raise his made flushes. So yeah, I think.
So you're saying if he calls me here on the turn, you can discount the flush?
I think so.
Yeah, I agree. So what happened, in fact, was I bet 7,600, and my opponent took quite a while, 90 seconds. Now, when I say 90 seconds, that doesn't sound like a long time, but that's a long time to sit there and think about whether you want to call 7,600. And it felt like a long time. I felt like my opponent was somewhat tortured by my bet, and that he was not acting, and that he finally called after about a 90-second tank. So at that point, I put him on. Well, let's do it together. Let's range him now that he's called 7,600. You already said when he calls, you don't think he has a flush anymore.
Right.
So what does he have?
I guess sets are possible. We haven't talked a lot about sets as a possibility, but I'm going to lean way more towards ace X's with or without the diamond. I just don't know if they're going to continue here now without a diamond on the turn.
Yeah, it feels like he should be folding like ace queen of spades, right? Or ace king of spades.
Yeah.
I mean, unless he really has a read on me, which is of course possible, and he has been studying me pretty hard. He's just been a real conscientious, like serious player that doesn't want to screw up. And so if he has a sense that I'm bluffing, then of course he could call with worse. But I think that's kind of unlikely because he just strikes me as someone that's he just sat down at the table. It's not like he knows what I've been up to prior to this. He doesn't have much sense of how I've been playing unless he saw me on TV or something.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part here is the fact that you said, he tanked for 90 seconds and then you felt like he wasn't acting. So
Right.
I'm trying to think of what hand. I mean, I've tanked many times for 90 seconds and then made a call, but it was because I was acting.
Right.
I'm trying to think of what he does this with that he's not, where he's not like kind of, what do I do? Trying to get you to shove on the river or something.
Right.
So
And sometimes I can't tell if my opponent is acting or not.
Sure.
And sometimes it's pretty obvious to me that he is or isn't. In this case, I felt like I had a strong read that he probably was not acting. Yeah. I would put it on like 80% certainty that he really had to think about whether he should call on the turn. Now, it might be, should I call or raise? But it felt more like, should I call or fold?
Right.
All right.
I think so. I just really feel like it's a lot of ace king, ace queen, ace jack with the queen king or jack of diamonds, or it's something like king queen with the king of diamonds. I just think there's a big diamond in there somewhere. It just feels like he's calculating the pot, maybe he's deciding if he wants to gamble with his nut flush draw, but it just seems like I don't. The only thing else that makes sense that you would legitimately sit there and think about that long is like aces, like I have top set here, or sevens, or I have a set and this guy's telling me he has a flush. What the heck do I do? Those are very possible.
I definitely felt like when he called on the turn that a set was more likely than it was on the flop.
Yeah, his actions would make that a higher part of his holding, I would think.
Yeah. So the river came, so he called after 90 seconds, and now there's 27,725 in the pot. By the way, he only has another 15,000 or so, and I only have another 12,000 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So this pot is bigger than our stacks. And the river is the tray of diamonds. And I have to tell you that I didn't watch the river come down. I watched my opponent as the river was dealt.
Mm.
And I felt that he did not like the river card.
And I got to tell you, I've probably not played as much live poker as you have, but I've played 100 live tournaments or something.
Sure,
it is one of the most accurate things I've seen. Like when you feel like somebody hated a river card, they almost always hated it. Like it's not very often where I'm like, wow, he hates that river, and then I make a move and he shows me the nuts.
Right. Right. He would have to be aware that I was watching him and not the river.
Mm-hmm.
And he would have to be good enough at acting to convince me without overacting that he didn't like it when in fact he loved it.
Right.
And I just this guy doesn't strike me as that kind of live player. I don't think he has a lot of live experience. I don't think he's played too many $1,700 tournaments. I don't think he's thinking about what I'm watching him do or not do. I think he's hoping the river's not what it ended up being.
Right.
So when I looked at the river, I was surprised to see it was a diamond because I thought my opponent didn't like it, and I kind of thought my opponent had a diamond.
Right.
A lot, right? Like he could have, like we said, ace king with the king of diamonds was still in a big part of his range. But now that he looks disappointed, so this is really the crux of the hand. How much would you trust, or how much should I trust, a live read? Like normally, because it's a diamond, I would check and give up because he got there.
Right.
And he was there all along, but he doesn't know that.
Right.
But because he seems so disappointed, I have to consider, should I continue now?
Right. So this is interesting because you have the live read, and I think we do want to talk about how much we trust that. But we also have to talk about the pot and how much how many chips we have left, and how often a shove has to work here for it to be profitable. So if we look at the whole range of hands we've talked about that he could have, we agree that maybe like ace queen with no diamond and things like that are a smaller part of his range, but they're possible.
Possible, but I think they would usually fold the turn.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We talked about sets. We also discounted the fact that he flopped a flush, but let's not forget that he could still have some of those kind of things, and it could be things like 5-6 of diamond. Well, I was going to say that makes a straight flush, but it doesn't. So that's another reason he could hate this river.
Right.
Because he could be like, I slow played it the whole time. I had him right where I wanted him, and of course another diamond comes. So, and then there's a possibility that he has the king of diamonds or the queen of diamonds. He might even fold the queen of diamonds here. We don't know. But we have 11.8K left. There's 27K or almost 28K in the middle. A bunch of those hands we just talked about have to fold when we shove. Don't have to, but likely will. Sets, sometimes those smaller flushes. A very small, but not a non-zero amount of the Queen of Diamonds hands. So, I mean, I don't think I hate shoving here at all.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, if I shove, I'm giving my opponent almost 4-1 on a call. And so if he has any type of flush, he probably should call because he's just getting such a good price to call with a flush.
Yes, unless he's really afraid of making mistakes in this live tournament that he's not comfortable playing at.
Derek Tenbusch, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I thought of. That's what it hit me, is that against most players, shoving here would be less profitable because they're going to call and catch my bluff so often when they're given such a good price. But because I had this read on him in general and this specific read on him on the river, I decided to go for it. And I put in my last 11.8 with Jack High, and my opponent tanked for about 3 minutes and folded.
That's a long time.
That's a huge amount. After he already tanked for 90 seconds on the turn, and players at the table were getting annoyed, and he told the guy next to him he had a set of aces.
Wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, don't try this at home. I don't recommend trying to bluff people off a set of aces.
I'm not going to lie. There was a part of me that was hoping, like, with all that build-up about the live reads and all this stuff, you were going to be like, he had the King of Diamonds. And
he called. He snap called me, yeah. He had the nuts and stuff. Yeah. I mean, and that has happened to me before. I mean, nobody's live read. I don't care who they are. Nobody's live reads are 100% accurate. But I guess I play so much live poker that I've learned to really trust certain situations. Like you say, the river tell is usually pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Especially a player like this. Now, if you try to pick up a river tell against, like one of the best players in the world, like if Fedor is across from you and you're trying to pick up a river tell on him, like good luck.
Yeah, don't try this one against him.
Yeah, I'm not talking about against the best in the world. It all starts with I had a feel for who he was right when he sat down. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back too much for this hand because it was still a tough river decision. And I'm glad it worked out in my favor. But I thought there was a decent chance that you might say, even though it worked, you don't like it. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. I try not to be too results oriented. It is nice to pick up a nice pot like this. By the way, I end up not even cashing in this tournament. So it's not like, and after that springboarded me into, the final table or something. Nothing like that. No Cinderella story here or anything. But, just a kind of a spot that I think a lot of players would have missed that I took. And I still wasn't sure whether it was a spot I should have taken. But in this particular case, I felt like trusting my live read was the way to go. And I've done this before and lost, and like you say, got caught by the King of Diamonds and, caught bluffing and have to go home. And in those situations, I remember feeling like, well, you know what, Clayton, you had a read and you trusted your read.
Yep.
And that's all you can do. And I don't usually feel bad when I bust in this way. So if you are a good enough actor and you find yourself at my table and you're able to convince me, as this guy did, that you hate the river, you might get all my chips.
Yeah. What's kind of interesting here, too, which is something I haven't really thought a lot about, but the fact that we're out of position and we're doing the shoving first act on a very scary board makes me think it's even a better play because it just looks so strong. Like if this was reversed and he checked you on the river and then you shove, he might go, well, I checked him, so of course he's going to bluff here because now I look weak, so I'm going to call with my top set of aces. But you've been the aggressor the whole time, and you saw the 3 of diamonds just like he did and said, I like that card. That card looks cool to me. I sometimes wonder if this hand were the positions in this hand were reversed, if you actually get a call from the aces here.
Yeah, I think I would. I think I would at least some of the time, especially given the price. But I agree with you. It's a really good point. Sometimes being out of position is a good thing. I have a lot more success bluffing from out of position than I do in position because guys love to check and bluff catch. I even spoke about your hand. I said that I make more money than the average player checking and calling. That's what that is, right? You're bluff catching. So
I will say too that I don't like the way he played his hand almost anywhere.
Yeah. No, he was scared. He played his hand in a timid and scared way, but I think his hand was just a little too strong to fold until it finally wasn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like if I'm him, I might just call on the flop when you raise, but I'm definitely getting it on the turn.
Yeah. If he really did have a set of aces, which we don't know. I mean, I heard him say that to his neighbor. He didn't say it to me, so it's a little more reliable, but he might be just trying to save face. Maybe he had something else. But whatever he had, I don't like the way he played the hand.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I think that'll do it for this episode. Derek, thank you so much for joining me. Very stimulating conversation. Definitely, guys, tweet us. Let me know how bad you think this shove is at Clayton Comic. And Derek, let them know what you're up to and where they can reach you as well.
Yeah, so hit me up at Derek Tenbusch, which I'm not going to spell because it's all spelled weird, but I'll put it down in the show notes so you can hit me up on Twitter. And twitch.tv/Killingbird too if you want to come by and check out the stream sometime.
Every Tuesday night you have what you call a home game, but it's not a home game, is it? You're not there handing out snacks and drinks for everybody.
No, but it's close. It's like as close as you can get on the virtual felt. It's private password, so only people that come and get the password from me can join. It's very cheap. It's a $3.30 tournament with re-entries. So if you bust, you can get back in. And there's a $1 bounty on everybody's head. So if you can kind of kill a little variance by getting a couple of bounties. And I always put some amount of money extra on my head. So like last night in the home game, I had $20 on my head. So if you knocked me out, in a $3 tournament, you got $20, which I just sent you on your account. So it's a lot of fun. People talk a lot of trash. It's like the one tournament where like you're allowed to slow roll people and you're allowed to like bluff and show the bluff, and you're allowed to call somebody a fish because we all know each other. So it's just a lot of fun. So come join the action. It's good times.
That sounds great. One of these days, I'm gonna download the ACR client and play with you. One of these days for a Tuesday night home game, just to see if I can get that bounty myself.
Sounds great.
The bragging rights that would afford me here on the podcast, you'll never live it down if I collect your bounty. As long as you don't have to put one back on my head as well, then it will be okay. All right, well, for Derek Tenbusch and for everyone here at Tournament Poker Edge, I'm Clayton Fletcher. Thank you so much for listening.
Hold 'em like they do in Texas plays. Fold 'em, let 'em hit me, raise it, baby, stay with me. Luck and intuition, play the cards with babes to start. And after she's been hooked, I'll play the one that's on her heart. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll get her heart, show her what I got. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Can't read mine, no she can't read a mile. Poker face, she's got to love nobody. Poker face, poker face. Poker face, poker face. I wanna roll with her, a hard pair we will be. While little gambling is fun when you're with me. I love it. Russian roulette is not the same without a gun. And baby, when it's love, it's not rough, it isn't fun.